What are you doing when you get to Okinawa? Like, what's the mission of the team?
You're continuing to build a relationship out there. Obviously, we're stationed out there. There's 2 bases. There's Camp Hansen and Camp Schwab. Those are the 2 sites there. There's a unit that's permanently stationed out there as well. So you're there. You're doing a lot of iterations with the local forces there. You get to go do some of the island stuff. So we went and trained with the Republic of Korea Marines, which was fun and fascinating to see how they train and lead and stuff like that. But
what differences did you see? Because I mean, the Korean military the South Korean military has a freaking outstanding reputation from the Korean War, from the Vietnam War, and not just an outstanding reputation. Let me quantify that a little bit more. Like they're beasts. Like they're brutal. They get after it in a big way. Even throughout history, like we joke about the kinder, gentler military that we have, now, but America has always been somewhat kinder, gentler than a lot of other militaries. So, how was the Koreans?
They're pretty strict. They're pretty crazy. They're small, but they're mighty. We had some of our teams do some snow packages with them, which is terrible. Like, I hate the cold, and the Koreans would get out there like in the middle of the morning, just no shirts on, getting PT in the snow, and like,
hell yeah,
watching them train and watching them fight, and then kind of introducing to their cultures, and we're switching food and stuff like that. It was a really good experience because I was a squad leader at the time, so I got paired up with one of their squad leaders. So we're sharing insights. We're teaching them.
You speak English?
Enough.
Yep.
Enough to get along. Like we know what each other are trying to do. And so a lot of, we're like clearing houses together with them, awesome. Which there's that language barrier and stuff like that, but it's fun. And I get to learn just a different way to lead. Like there's some compassion there. Like they really care for other people. It's a different military, but it's all just leadership that I'm trying to take in. Mm-hmm. And, throughout my time in life, I've really been aware of, how other people lead, because you can't be naive and just be watching what other people do. Like, I'm always fascinated how other people treat each other. And I learned a lot on what not to do, and I learned a lot of what to do.
What did you learn what not to do on that one?
What not to do was, the frontal direct assault on people, which coming from the Marine Corps, and, I've been quiet, but the Marine Corps, like, you can't be quiet. And the Marine Corps, I love the Marine Corps, very rock, paper, rank organization, meaning I'm in charge of you. So guess what? It's your fault. It's your problem. The problem with being direct is initially I was fascinated because it worked, right? Because I can use threats and I can use consequences, and ultimately, like, it gets things done. Like, hey, Jocko, you're going to do this or else, like, guess what? Typically you're going to do it, but at what cost? So it's this, tactical victory, strategic loser, as we all talk about. So I learned eventually, from that, watching other people, and then towards the end of my career, that I was rubbing people the wrong way. I thought I was doing great. I was getting things done, but I found like people didn't want to work with me or work for me because of how I handled things. And so this direct, frontal assault was something that I could not utilize. There's a time and place for it, but it's, 1%, 2%, 3% of the time. Majority of the time, it's that indirect approach, as we talk about. So that was humbling for me, because at the time I thought I was doing everything right, because that's what I saw a lot of people do, was it's direct. Like, and I would just see people get yelled at, and they're like, oh, like, that's how you get things done. But then that person rarely is leaving there like, thank you so much for that wisdom that you imparted on me. So that was a big lesson learned there.
Dude, I got so lucky in my second platoon, going from my platoon commander that got fired to Delta Charlie, who was awesome. And it was just such a contrast in 2 days. We went from like a guy that's yelling and screaming and imposing everything on us, and we get him fired. We have the big mutiny. We get him fired. And then Delta Charlie comes in and takes over, and it's just like, dude, just as awesome and humble as you could ever hope for. Indirect to the point where it's like, I don't even think if I was to guess, and I said, hey, Delta Charlie, did you use the indirect approach with us? He'd be like, oh, no, I'm not really sure what that is. But I figured you guys would have the best ideas. You know what I mean? Like, it's like what he believed. It was so good. And man, I got so lucky in having that, because it's very hard to learn stuff. And a lot of times what happens is you learn, you get a lot of your DNA from your first platoon and your first leadership. So if you got a guy that's yelling and screaming to you, and like you said, guess what? It worked. We all did it. We all, and by the way, there's also, I had another guy that was a master chief that was a brow beater, meaning, You come up with your little idea, Echo Charles, but the belittling that you would get before you really even presented the idea was so bad. You're just like, I'd rather not do this. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Think I'm a grown man. I'm like 22-year-old grown man. And, you know, I'd see him talking. I'd be like, dude, I don't want none of that. I'm not down for this. Like whatever he's the master browbeater. And then as I became friends with that guy, of course, former relationship with him, I figured that out. But then you get older, you're like, dude, you'd see someone step into his line of wrath. You just be like, dude, there's nothing I can do for you. Like, Echo, you're my friend. I ain't got nothing for you. You know, it's game over for you, dude. I'm sorry. So, and learning again, like you said, then seeing how people, they might submit to him in the moment because there's no choice. It's a freaking SEAL Master Chief. Like, what are you gonna, like, you're screwed. You're an E4. Like, you literally have you have 0% chance of survival. Like, it's not happening. And so they submit. But the problem is those people just remember that, and they're not giving their best work, and they end up leaving. They go to different teams, and it's just terrible. So yeah, those are such important lessons to learn. And if you don't learn them, they'll come back and bite you. And you know, I try and imagine like young Codey. In my opinion, if I was to guess, you'd be like, hey, this is what we're doing today, blah, 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 blah. Like, totally professional, totally squared away, but with a little lack of connection, you know, and a little lack of feedback, and a little lack of, like, giving ownership away, because you're squared away, you know what to do, here's the plan, let's go execute it. You're just a matter-of-fact kind of guy. And I imagine when you were 21, 23, the matter-of-fact was a little bit more matter and a little bit more fact. So... was there some incidents that you remember? Was there an individual that you worked for that was like a yeller or a screamer or something like that? How did you, what made you see the light?
So for me, it was, you know, we would do peer evals on, you know, where people stood in the platoon, and I started to get some anonymous, not so anonymous feedback on, you know, how I was leading. And I started to really reflect and look back, you know, when I was subordinate on like how I viewed my leadership. And, you know, there's definitely people in my life that I didn't want to be like. Mm-hmm. And as I got older and, you know, I started to get a squad leader, and eventually I got thrown into a platoon sergeant role, I didn't want to be somebody that people didn't want to be like. I wanted to be someone that they're like, I want to be like him. I didn't want to be the name like, don't be like Sergeant Gandy. I didn't want to be that person. And I was trending in that direction just on how I handle myself. And I could see the writing on the wall from some of the anonymous feedback, but also just how the troops were receiving what I was saying. Is like, I would give them a command or an order, and like, just to see, you could just see it, like the culture, the look. And, you know, I have some good guys that would come talk to me. I'm like, hey man, like you can't do that. Or you can't say that. And also I was the youngest squad leader, and I had a lot of, you know, senior veteran squad leaders that were, you know, coaching me and teaching me and stuff like that. So really at the end of the day, I just reflecting on, you know, the time that I was in, I didn't want to be a name that people didn't want to be like, or like, man, that Sergeant Gandy, like, I want people like, yes, that's somebody you want to be like, or learn from him, not don't learn from him. So
that's a huge, that's very lucky, because like I said, a lot of people, they see Sergeant Gandy and he's yelling and screaming, and I'm one of your freaking Lance Corporals, and I hate it, but I emulate it. You know what I mean? It's like the chain of abuse, right? I beat up my kid, so then my kid hates it, but what does he do? Beats up his kid. And instead of breaking the chain and being like, oh, I remember how terrible it was to be treated like that. And I think that's where I got very lucky, because I had that 2 days. I saw it went from one extreme to the other extreme in 2 days. And I was only, how old was I? This was like 1993. So I was like 22. So otherwise, if it would have been a gradual, like, oh, we work for this guy, he's a jerk for a year, and then, you know, you come home, you go on post-deployment leave, then you get another guy, and that guy that comes in, he's going to take a little while to establish, but it's all compressed. So it's like, terrible leader, freaking best leader in 2 days. And I think that helped me so much, because it made me go, oh, wow, it's so obvious. It wasn't like, oh, that guy was a dick, but this guy's cool over a long period of time. I was like, oh, no, this guy's freaking terrible, and this guy's awesome. So recognizing that you shouldn't be the guy that you literally didn't like, as opposed to, oh, this guy hated him, but you know what? It worked. I still had to do what he said, so I'm going to act the same way. It's just, it's a little trap you can get caught in. A little trap. Got to watch out for that one.